The only people that your grandfather could raise from the dead were people that witchcraft killed. There is a difference between witchcraft death and normal death. Normal death comes by a decree from God, from the sovereign. Witchcraft death is like an armed robber preying on something that is not his own. It's not in the archives, it's not in the records that this person should depart at this time. They use witchcraft to edge the person out. It was not as if an armed robber came to break his skull. It was witchcraft they used to edge him out. And when they edge people out like that, they are prison houses that they can be kept for a time. Their spirit, I mean. It is from those prison houses that the man had wisdom in the priesthood of darkness as to how to set that captive free. So it was not actual resurrection. It's just restoration of what was stolen. Your people called me and say, hey, so wizards can say, calm down, it's okay. But do you see how much control that wizard had because of the knowledge of priesthood? Do you realize that you cannot be effective in priesthood if you are ignorant? It doesn't work with priesthood. Spiritual knowledge is the currency with which we do priesthood. I'd like to take us to the book of Genesis chapter 27. Genesis chapter 27, let us see a simple scripture that lays out the matter very, very plainly. And it came to pass when Isaac was old and his eyes were dim, so that he could not see, he called Esau his eldest son and said unto him, my son. And he said unto him, behold, here I am. And he said, behold, I am old, and I know not the day of my death. Now therefore take, I pray thee, thy weapons, thy quiver, and thy bow, and go out into the field, and take me some venison, and make me savory meat such as I love, and bring it to me that I may eat, that my soul may bless thee before I die. Can you see that his father was prescribing to him the kind of meat that he needs to make available? Such meat that is savory, such that he loves. And when he has dined in this venison, his soul will bless him. So when we talk about a sacrifice, we're talking about something that you can present before a spirit being that his soul will love. Something that you can present before a spirit being that he will look upon and be satisfied. Something that will provoke a response from that spirit being to deal with you with tender mercies and with great favor. And the Bible is saying that the priesthood of the New Testament is established to this end, to offer up spiritual sacrifices unto God. Are you there? And such sacrifices will be acceptable because it's offered by the promptings of the Spirit of Jesus Christ. I had to go through the entire book of Leviticus. And the reason why I did this was because the champion priest is Moses. And it will be difficult for us to understand the context of priesthood, even as it applies to New Testament reality, if we do not take some time to study the ministry of Moses and the mysteries that his ministries downloaded. Are you still with me? Now, through the ministry of Moses, we began to understand such sacrifices that our God can accept. His ministry provided a clue that establishes the operating system for all such righteous priesthood, because it gives us a lot of window to know the kind of sacrifices that will be pleasing in the sight of God. So the book of Leviticus happens to be our manual for this season. We'll take a theological look at it, understand its overview, and we must also note, because I need to present a few scriptures to us in our analysis of the book of Leviticus so that we will transit from information to understanding. I need to give us a few scriptures just to bring us back to the stage of capacity building one more time. Okay, maybe let's do Hebrews chapter 10, beginning from verse number 1. Hebrews chapter 10, beginning from verse number 1. Now, this is what Apostle Paul says. He said, for the law, having a shadow of good things to come, and not the very image of the things. Now, this is an attempt to explain to us that when we travel into the Old Testament and we see the patterns that are established in the Old Testament, the interpretation of those patterns in the New Testament is not always going to be in the shape that they are presented in the Old. There are a few adjustments that apply in most cases. You don't take it hook, line, and sinker. Now, he's saying that the Old Testament, this is the purpose that it serves. It is a shadow of things to come. Are you there? It is pointing to things that are yet to come. It is a prophetic drama about things that God wants to do. So, I hope you know sometimes. Have you taken a look at your shadow? Do you see your shadow sometimes? I know you don't. When it is 12 noon, try to trace your nose in the shadow. You will discover that the nose you will see in the shadow might be like this. You are not following me. You might find a part of your body that is highlighted by the shadow in a proportion bigger than the actual image. So if the Old Testament is a shadow of things to come, that means it is a prophetic pointer pointing to realities that will be obtainable in the future. Are you there? The second thing we need to note is that it is not the very image of the things. It is not the very image of the things. So there is no way you can understand the things by just solely looking at the shadow, because it is not the very image of the thing. So we are not supposed to practice priesthood in the exact similitude as it is found in the Old Testament. But we know that what is obtainable in the Old Testament is pointing to something that is to come. Does that make sense? All right, so it's Apostle Paul that is trying to give us the adaptation principle. And the adaptation principle is the spiritual explanation that causes us to have the new eyes and new lenses to see the New Testament in the Old Testament. Once you are armed with the fact that it is a shadow, the second thing you need to be armed with is that it is a shadow of good things to come. That means it's prophetic. Third thing you need to be armed with is that it is not the very image of the things. Can never, with those sacrifices which they offered year by year, continually make the comers thereunto perfect. So the sacrifices that were offered in the Old Testament did not have the capacity to make the people that attended to them and the people that benefited from them perfect. So there was a deficiency with the actual Old Testament structure. Verse 2. For then will there not have ceased to be offered. That is, if they were perfect, God would have stopped there and would have been operating that kind of priesthood. And there will be no need for it to cease, because that the worshippers once purged should have had no more conscience of sins. But in those sacrifices, there is a remembrance again made of sins every year. So there is a cyclical process that must be undertaken, because the sacrifices did not have the adequate spiritual stature to undo sins. So there is a ritual around sins that was done every year. Yes, verse 4. For it is not possible that the blood of bulls and of goats should take away sins. Wherefore, when he cometh into this world, he says, sacrifice and offering thou wouldest not, but a body hast thou prepared me. This is a transition that I need to draw our attention to. Are you there with me? Now, the transition that I'm trying to draw your attention to is the key to understanding New Testament priesthood. And this transition has to do with migrating from sacrifice to a living sacrifice. That's what that scripture is. How many of you still remember that in the Old Testament, you bring a goat, and the goat is what is sacrificed? So, and the implication of that sacrifice applies to you, even though you were not the one that physically suffered the depravity that the goat was subjected to. But the spiritual effect of the sacrifice of the goat applies to you. Now, what Jesus did when he came to become the ultimate sacrifice was that it was no longer goats that were sacrificed. It became an experience that a man will experience. Do you understand that? Or you didn't get that? So we moved, there is a slight movement there from sacrifice to living sacrifice. Now, our New Testament priesthood is founded, as you will see in a moment, is founded and predicated upon the efforts that Jesus has already made. And you need to understand it very well so that when we begin to apply it, as we apply it in the natural, it might not look powerful. But the consequence it has in the spirit is the reason why we operate that way. Is that clear? Remember that all forms of priesthood in the New Testament is predicated on what Jesus did. Because without the sacrifice of Jesus, we will not even have any priesthood at all. I'm going to show you the infrastructure that was in the temple. When you move from the outer court into the holy place, the first furniture you will see is what is called the brazen altar. All forms of priesthood in that corridor is based on that brazen altar. Those of you that are students of the Bible, that have labored in the Bible for a while, you understand the meaning of brazen, bronze. Bronze means judgment. And judgment was what was revealed to Adam in the garden when God told him that in the day that you eat of this fruit, you shall surely die. That's the position of God's justice system. So the judgment that was already hanging over man on the account of that rebellion existed before man committed the infringement. Is that not how law is? You are not following me. That's how law is. I don't know, maybe Barrister Kassa will help us. If somebody steals a goat and it's confirmed that the person has stolen a goat, what is the likely penalty that is going to receive? Please arm him with a microphone, please. What is the likely penalty that the person... Please, when you are coming for Bible study, come armed because you can be confronted with the microphone. What's the likely penalty that the person is to face if it is confirmed that the person stole a goat?
The law that is already there will be applied against the person to the effect that he should either be imprisoned for a term of years,
okay,
or its equivalent of a fine.
Okay, if someone breaks into a residence,
yeah,
and in his efforts somebody dies, what's the position of the law about that situation?
Okay, that's a capital offense.
It's a capital offense.
Yes. So straight away, he will. The law will require him to also be imprisoned for a term of years.
For a term of years,
yes.
You see. So what I'm trying to say is that the position of the law is already established about these crimes. It is not when you commit the crime that the law will be formulated to accommodate it.
Yeah.
The law already has penalties.
Okay,
that's what I just wanted you to confirm.
Thank you.
Now, so what we are seeing here what we are seeing here is that God told Adam that if he eats of that fruit, that the judgment about that level of departure is already captured in the justice system of heaven. So when Jesus came, the major assignment of Jesus was to create an escape route for humankind, because humankind is already on the bad side of the law. And in order for Jesus to make a way for humankind, he had to receive that judgment. He had to submit to that judgment. So the ultimate purpose of Jesus in his ministry was to offer himself in order to satisfy the claims of divine justice, but the principle of substitution, so that you and me can have a way to experience life. So Jesus took our place in judgment so that we can take his place in life. That's the story of the gospel. Now, so all of our priesthood is based on the foundation of what Jesus did. So what Jesus did is what is referred to, or what is seen as, the brazen altar in the holy place. Are you clear? Are you there? So the sacrifice of Jesus is the biggest altar that you can ever find. And our priesthood is based on interacting with that is sacrifice and applying it in various fashions, in various forms. Because in Jesus, sacrifice passes to become a living sacrifice. Sacrifices previously were external things that were given. But the priesthood that Jesus came to manifest, which is the priesthood after the order of Melchizedek, it is human beings that become the sacrifice. You get that? Oh, you didn't get it? Wherefore, when he cometh into the world, he said, sacrifices, offerings, thou wouldest not. It means that the sacrifices that were offered in the Old Testament did not really have the ability to undo the things for which they were offered. So when Jesus came, he says, sacrifices, burnt offerings, that you would not, but a body you have prepared for me. The reason why you have given me a body is so that I can become the ultimate sacrifice. Can you see that the sacrifice now has moved from animals and it has moved to a man? You get that? A body. That was the reason why Jesus was assigned a body, so that he can pay the ultimate price, the ultimate type of sacrifice that will be pleasing in the sight of God, that will satisfy the claims of divine justice. Go on. In burnt offerings and sacrifices for sin, thou hast had no pleasure. Go on. Then said I, lo, I am come in the volume of the book, as it is written of me, to do thy will, O God. Yeah? Above, when he said sacrifice and offering and burnt offerings and offering for sin, thou wouldest not, neither hast pleasure therein, which are offered by the law. It means the law did not satisfy God. It only appeased God for a time. And that is why it was repeated, because it was just a means of appeasement. It was not a means of satisfaction. So the claims of divine justice were not satisfied under the law. If you come and bring a bull and sacrifice, it might cover your offense for a time. But the implication of that sacrifice and the vocabulary of the blood that is shed will begin to wane in the realm of the spirit until it fully evaporates after a time. So you will need to redo that sacrifice again so that you can experience and enjoy the same level of immunity. Are you there? All right. So the reason why the sacrifices had to be cyclical and continuous is because they did not have the ability to satisfy God. Now, this is January. So most of you bought Christmas goat, bought Christmas ram, Please, what is the average cost of Christmas goat? Pastor Chooks, I know you, a goat laid down its life so that you could celebrate. What was the cost of that goat? Or you are not the one that is in that department? Okay, Pastor Chooks is on the high side. So he has people that take care of such issues. I'm talking about someone that can give us the current market price for goat right now. Huh? You know, I've not been to the market for a long time. Very long time. Okay, somebody's coming up here. I'm hearing 45,000. What? 60,000, depending on the size of the stomach. Now, okay. Let me ask you a question. If every time you lie, you need to bring a goat to consider 2023, how many goats would you have been required to make available? So if you study the book of Galatians, you will find a terminology called the curse of the law. Have you seen that? The curse of the law. You know what the curse of the law is? The requirement for sacrifices, for offenses. Even if you are a billionaire and you are offering one goat of 60,000 naira per lie, and maybe the one for fornication might be ram. The other day, we were sending somebody with bride price to go and pay for a lady in Botswana. It was 7 cows. 7 cows. How much does a cow cost? I didn't know that it's only in Nigeria that they price around bride price. If you try to price somewhere else, it's an insult. So when they say 7, they mean 7. So, are you there? So it means, according to Botswana culture, the cost of a man is 7 cows. So if the person commits murder and somebody dies, the number of cows you need to bring to atone for that error might be 7 cows. How much does 1 cow go for? You're already seeing that all of us will be in debt. None of us will be rich enough to cover the level of atonement that is needed in order for us to walk free of the wrath of God. None of us. So that is what we call the cost of the law. The cost of paying for your infringements against God. You and me don't have enough resources to pay for it. Exactly. All right, so Jesus is bringing a new kind of priesthood. And the new kind of priesthood that is bringing on the scene is what we call the priesthood of the living sacrifice. This priesthood is going to affect you and me. This new type of priesthood. Are you there? Okay, so. Then said he, Lo, I am come to do thy will, O God. He taketh away the first, that he may establish the second. It's because of the inadequacies of the sacrifices of the Old Testament that God had to send his son, and he gave his son a body so that he can offer himself as a sacrifice that he can accept. Do you still remember the parable of savory meat that I love? That savory meat is Jesus Christ. Because the sacrifices under the Old Testament did not have enough stature to satisfy God. Are you there? Now, so I want to draw your attention to some matters. Before we leave Hebrews chapter 10, I will still want us to read Hebrews chapter 10, verse 1, before we migrate. Are you still with me? Now, the reason why I'm going this way and showing you the broad concept of priesthood as it is practiced in the Levitical order is so that when we zero down and begin to establish how to raise a personal altar. Are you with me? You would have understood the concept of priesthood, and it will be easy for you to apply. It will be easy for you to practice it personally. And from experiential perspective, I will be able to suggest to you the kind of implication that you are going to derive by practicing priesthood in the art of establishing a personal altar. So when we finish talking about a personal altar, then we move to a community or a family altar. Then we move to a national altar. It sustains the same principles, but its application in each case might be just a little different. And when it goes beyond a personal altar, there are other terminologies we are going to include in describing it, like quorum. Why is it that on the day of Pentecost there had to be 120? In which other place do you find 120 people that are? Is there any other parallel that carries 120 in the Bible? Oh, for you is no. You see, God is a God of patterns. He's a God of science. There's a pattern to the things he does. He doesn't do things one-off because he's prophetic. What he does in the Old Testament is pointing to something he will do in the New Testament. And so there are certain patterns that will be littered around what he does in the Old Testament so that when he begins to do it in the New, you can now say, oh, this is that. This is that. There are parallels in the Bible that will give you insight into what God is fulfilling. Are you there? Okay. So verse number 1, it says, for the law, having a shadow of things to come. The first thing about the law is that it is prophetic. Second thing you need to know is that it is not the very image of the things. And the sacrifices that were offered therein could not make such that came unto it perfect. Now, the reason why I came back here is to show you just the number 1 point that I raised. It is a shadow of good things. Not just shadow of things to come, but shadow of good things to come. So we are going to look at the Old Testament context, and I'm not so concerned about that. We will see what it points to. And we are going to take our education from the things that all the shadow of offerings, all the shadow of sacrifices point to, so that we can understand our position and the implication of those sacrifices within the context of the new covenant. Because that is such that is applicable to you and to me. Are you there? You know, we spoke about sacrifices yesterday, and I told you that a sacrifice is something that can be offered to a spirit being that a spirit being will be satisfied about. So if at this point I decide to ask you a question, what do you think that if you offer God, God will be satisfied about? Do you have an answer to that question? You know the answer to the question? Moses knew those things. Moses knew the things that God will accept. He knew the things that God will be satisfied about. And if we want to study priesthood, there's no way we can escape studying the life and the ministry of Moses. Do you still remember the Passover? The Passover in Egypt? Still remember it? Still remember what was about to happen? It was the angel of death that was about to visit Egypt. It was already concluded. God had given the decree, and the angel of death was mobilized. And then Moses now, because he has a relationship with God, went to consult God, and God gave him a word of wisdom. The word of wisdom that God gave Moses could not stop the decree that had gone forth about the angel of death visiting Egypt. But the word of wisdom that God gave to Moses was able to confuse the angel. He said, take the blood of a ram, put it on your doorpost, put it on the lintel of your house. And the children of Israel did it. When the angel of death came to Israel, he said, somebody help me kill the firstborn here. So he passed over. So when you hear Passover, don't think that they were preferred just because they were Israelites. They were preferred. The angel that was sent to carry out their assignment was confused because Moses operated a wisdom that came from a superior realm. So So in the eyes of that angel, the sons of Goshen, the firstborn of Goshen, were already sacrificed. That's why he passed over to finish the assignment. He said, somebody help me. Oh. The person has helped me to do this assignment. You see, that's where priesthood comes in. Oh my, you are not here. You are not here. You heard what Sister Queen, where's Queen? Do you know people have been asking me questions? That, okay, if a wizard can raise the dead, hey, then what are we doing? I say, calm down. So I went on research. When you were sleeping, yesterday, I was researching. Now, do you realize, so Queen will need to come and confirm this. The only people that your grandfather could raise from the dead were people that witchcraft killed. There is a difference between witchcraft death and normal death. Normal death comes by a decree from God, from the sovereign. Witchcraft death is like an armed robber preying on something that is not his own. It's not in the archives, it's not in the records that this person should depart at this time. They use witchcraft to edge the person out. It was not as if an armed robber came to break his skull. It was witchcraft they used to edge him out. And when they edge people out like that, there are prison houses that they can be kept for a time. Their spirit, I mean. It is from those prison houses that the man had wisdom in the priesthood of darkness as to how to set that captive free. So it was not actual resurrection. It's just restoration of what was stolen. Your people called me and say, hey, so wizards can say, calm down, it's okay. But do you see how much control that wizard had because of the knowledge of priesthood? Do you realize that you cannot be effective in priesthood if you are ignorant? It doesn't work with priesthood. Spiritual knowledge is the currency with which we do priesthood.